a peaceful small town. The morning fog hangs between the pine trees, the streets quiet with only the soft whisper of the wind. This town is known for its tranquility and calm. Nothing extraordinary happens here, just simple life continuing as usual. But beneath this perfect facade, something feels off. Violet Rose, a beautiful and intelligent young woman, known for her kindness and love of the arts. She was often seen walking along the lake or wandering through town, greeting everyone she met. However, she also kept a secret, something most people didn't know about her. Detective Emma Carter, the detective assigned to investigate Violet's disappearance. Emma is calm, thoughtful, and not easily swayed by anything outside of logic. Though professional, she starts to feel an unusual tension in this case. Sarah, Violet's close friend, Violet's best friend, who felt something was wrong before Violet vanished. She was the first to notice Violet's absence and is deeply affected by the sense of loss. On a bright morning, the news of Violet's disappearance spreads throughout the town. When Sarah realizes her friend hasn't returned after a few days, she reports it to the authorities. Everyone who knew Violet believes she would never just leave town. She was loving and had no reason to disappear without a word. Detective Emma Carter arrives in town and begins interviewing the locals. Some say they saw Violet walking in the forest at night, while others recall hearing strange sounds, like soft whispers, that couldn't be explained. There are rumors that Violet had mentioned feeling uneasy in recent days, but no one expected it to be connected to her disappearance. That night, Detective Emma returns to her inn, feeling restless. As she lies down to sleep, she hears a strange sound outside her window, like a soft whisper coming from afar. When she opens the window to investigate, there's only darkness and a cold, biting air. She tries to brush it off, but the feeling that something isn't right continues to haunt her. A necklace that looks very familiar. It's Violet's. Carefully, Detective Emma picks it up and gazes at it in the silence of the night. Something's wrong, and there may be something darker lurking behind Violet's disappearance. The next morning, Emma meets Sarah, Violet's close friend, at the town's small cafe. Sarah's eyes are red from lack of sleep, the weight of worry heavy on her shoulders. She recalls the last few days before Violet's disappearance, how Violet had seemed distant, almost haunted by something she couldn't quite explain. She kept talking about hearing things at night, Sarah says quietly, her voice trembling. She said it was like whispers in the dark, but no one else could hear them. I thought she was just stressed out with work, but now, I don't know. Emma listens intently, her mind racing. She asks Sarah about Violet's life, her relationships, anything that could shed light on what might have happened, but there's nothing out of the ordinary. Violet was beloved by all. No enemies, no hidden tensions at least. That's what everyone believed. Later, Emma visits Violet's family home to search for any clues. As she enters the room Violet used to sleep in, the air feels unusually cold. The bed is neatly made, and everything is in place, but there's an unsettling stillness to the room. Emma's eyes catch a small book on the nightstand, a journal, its pages worn with use. She flips through it carefully. The entries are mostly mundane, filled with thoughts about art, dreams, and the small things in Violet's life. But then she comes across a particular entry that stands out. Last night, I saw him again, the figure in the corner of my room. I thought it was just a dream, but when I woke up, the smell of the forest was in the air. I can't tell if it's real anymore. I don't know how much longer I can stand this. The words are unsettling. Who was she referring to, and what did she mean by the smell of the forest? Determined to follow this new lead, Emma visits the woods near Violet's house, the same woods some townsfolk mentioned seeing her walking through. As she enters the dense forest, the air grows thick, almost heavy with something she can't explain. She walks deeper, looking for anything that might give her a sense of what happened to Violet. After a few hours, Emma finds something, a small, weathered pendant, lying in the dirt, half buried under a fallen branch. It's an odd symbol, unlike anything she's ever seen. This pendant, however, is not just any trinket. It's a part of something bigger, something darker. That evening, as Emma sits in her room, going over the pendant and the journal entry, she feels the same eerie sensation she had the night before. The soft whispers return, only this time they are louder, closer, almost as if they are coming from inside her own head. Suddenly, a voice breaks through the silence, a whisper, so faint it's almost a breath, but distinct enough to be heard clearly. The truth is buried in the woods, but so are the lies. Emma's heart races. The words echo in her mind as she stares at the pendant in her hands. What did it mean? What was Violet trying to say? And who or what was behind these mysterious whispers? Determined not to let fear control her, Emma sets her resolve. She knows she must return to the woods. But this time, she won't be alone. The next morning, Emma meets with Sarah again, this time in a quieter corner of the cafe. Sarah looks more exhausted than before, her eyes shadowed with sleepless nights. She's been going through Violet's belongings, trying to find anything that might make sense of all this. "I found something," Sarah says, her voice barely above a whisper. She slides a small envelope across the table. Inside is a photograph of Violet, but it's not just any picture. In the background of the photo is a strange symbol carved into the tree behind her, barely visible but unmistakable. It's the same symbol as the pendant Emma found in the woods. "Violet never mentioned this," Sarah continues, her voice trembling, "but I have a feeling this is where it all began, whatever this is." With Sarah's help, Emma decides to return to the woods once again. They take a more cautious approach this time, knowing there's something in the forest that's drawing them in, something they don't fully understand. As they enter the woods, a sense of dread washes over them. The trees loom over them like silent witnesses, and the air grows thick, heavier with each step. The whispers from the previous night seem to hang in the air, though neither Sarah nor Emma can make out the words. It's as if the forest itself is alive, watching. They follow the trail deeper into the woods, the dense foliage partying as they make their way toward the place where Emma had found the pendant. Suddenly, Sarah stops in her tracks. "Emma, look!" In front of them, a clearing opens up, revealing an old, decaying stone structure, barely visible through the overgrown vines. It looks like a forgotten ruin, abandoned by time, but there's something unnervingly familiar about it. This was no ordinary place. It felt ancient, sacred even. Emma walks closer to the ruins, her pulse quickening. As she steps into the clearing, she feels the temperature drop, and a chill runs down her spine. She turns to Sarah, who seems frozen, eyes wide with terror. In the center of the clearing lies a large, flat stone etched with the same symbol from the photograph, the one that was also on the pendant. The moment Emma reaches out to touch the stone, a low, almost imperceptible hum fills the air. It's as if the ground itself is alive, vibrating with a power that neither of them can comprehend. "Something's wrong," Sarah whispers, her voice trembling. "I can feel it. This is where Violet was. This is where she disappeared." Emma turns to look at Sarah, the weight of the discovery pressing down on her. She knows they've just uncovered the heart of the mystery, but the air is thick with something else, a presence, something watching them. Before they can react, they hear a rustling sound behind them. Emma spins around, but there's nothing there, only the trees, swaying in the wind. But then, they hear it, a faint whisper, so quiet it's barely audible. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice is chilling, distant, but unmistakable. It's the same voice that had whispered to Emma in her room, but this time, it feels more sinister. Suddenly, a figure appears at the edge of the clearing, a tall, shadowy silhouette, barely visible in the fading light. It moves with an unnatural grace, its form shifting like smoke in the air. Sarah gasps, stumbling backward. "Who are you?" Emma demands, her voice steady but filled with fear. The figure doesn't answer. It just watches them, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. With a swift motion, the figure vanishes into the trees, leaving nothing but a cold breeze and a lingering sense of dread. Emma and Sarah stand frozen, unsure of what they've just witnessed. But one thing is clear: they've uncovered something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The figure vanishes into the trees, leaving Emma and Sarah standing in the clearing, their breaths shallow and hurried. The whispers linger in the air, now louder, more menacing. "You shouldn't have come here." The words echo in Emma's mind, twisting her thoughts. Who or what was that figure? What had they just stumbled upon? Sarah clutches Emma's arm, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "We need to leave. This place isn't safe." Emma's heart pounds in her chest, but her determination doesn't waver. She knows they've found something important, something that ties directly into Violet's disappearance. But the terror she feels is real. The question now is whether they should press on or retreat. "We can't leave yet," Emma says, her voice steady, despite the fear clawing at her. "We need to understand what's happening here. We need to find out who or what that was." Reluctantly, Sarah agrees. With one last glance at the empty woods, the two of them begin to move deeper into the forest, their steps slow and cautious. The air feels heavier with each step, the once peaceful forest now suffocating in its silence. They make their way to the edge of the clearing, where they find an old stone path, barely visible beneath the overgrowth. The stones are uneven and cracked, leading toward an unknown destination. Emma follows the path, her instincts telling her that it might lead to the answers they desperately need. As they walk, the trees begin to close in around them, their branches creaking like old bones in the wind. The whispers seem to follow them, growing louder, more insistent. Emma can feel her skin crawl, the sensation that they are being watched becoming overwhelming. Eventually, the path leads them to a hidden cave, its entrance partially obscured by thick vines and moss. Emma feels a shiver run down her spine as she gazes at the dark opening. This was it. She can sense that whatever they are searching for lies beyond this cave. Sarah hesitates, her voice barely a whisper. Are we really doing this? Emma takes a deep breath, steadying herself. We have no choice. We need to find out what happened to Violet. They step into the cave, the air immediately growing colder. The faint whispers that had been following them now turn into distorted murmurs, swirling around them like a storm. The deeper they go, the more oppressive the atmosphere becomes. After what feels like hours, they finally come upon a small, dimly lit chamber. At the center of the room, there is an altar-like stone, covered in strange carvings. The walls of the chamber are etched with symbols that make Emma's blood run cold. It's the same symbol that's been appearing everywhere, the one from the pendant, the photograph, and the ruins in the woods. Emma kneels before the stone, her heart racing. She reaches out to touch the carvings, and as her fingers brush against the stone, a violent tremor shakes the ground beneath them. The whispers rise to a deafening crescendo. Suddenly, a low, guttural voice fills the chamber. It seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You've awakened it. Now, you must pay the price. The room goes dark, and the temperature drops drastically. Emma and Sarah both freeze, their breaths visible in the air as the room fills with a dense, suffocating fog. In the distance, a figure emerges from the shadows, tall, imposing, and cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glow with a malevolent light. You shouldn't have come here, the voice repeats, now clearly emanating from the figure standing before them. Violet Rose was never meant to be found. The figure steps forward, its presence overwhelming. Emma feels a chill like no other, a primal fear crawling up her spine. Who are you? She demands, her voice shaky but defiant. The figure's glowing eyes fixate on her, its lips curling into a sinister smile. I am what watches over this place, and now, you belong to it. Before Emma can react, the figure reaches out with long, twisted fingers, and in an instant, everything goes black. You belong to it. The voice echoes through the pitch-black chamber like a curse. Then silence. Emma gasps as her eyes flutter open. She's lying on the cold, damp cave floor, the sound of dripping water somewhere nearby. Her head is spinning, her vision blurred. For a moment, she doesn't remember where she is, until the memory hits her like a wave. The cave, the altar, the figure in the shadows. She sits up quickly, heart pounding. Sarah, there's no response. Panic flares in her chest. Sarah, she calls again, louder this time. From the far end of the chamber, a groan, then movement. Sarah slowly emerges from the mist, disoriented but unharmed. Emma, what happened? I don't know, Emma says, helping her up. Everything went dark after that thing spoke. They glance around. The figure is gone. The altar now lies cracked down the middle, as if split by some unseen force. The air feels lighter, but the tension remains. The presence still lingers, unseen but felt. As they stumble out of the cave, back into the suffocating stillness of the woods, Emma clutches the strange pendant she kept in her pocket. It's warm now, pulsing, faintly glowing. It was inert before. Something has changed. Sarah's voice trembles. You heard what it said, didn't you? That Violet was never meant to be found. Emma nods, eyes narrowed in thought. It wasn't just a warning. It was a claim. Like she's been taken by whatever this is. They emerge into the clearing where it all began. The forest now strangely silent. No wind, no birds, only the rustle of their footsteps. As if the woods themselves are watching, waiting. Back in town, Emma decides to visit someone she had been avoiding, Lorna Rose, Violet's mother. Eleanor lives on the edge of town in an old cottage wrapped in ivy and shadows. She opens the door slowly, her eyes tired but alert, as if she's been expecting someone. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asks before Emma can even speak. Emma's blood runs cold. "Saw what?" Eleanor steps aside, letting them in. Her house smells of old books, herbs, and candle wax. The curtains are always drawn, the light dim. "You found the altar," Eleanor says softly, "and now it knows you." Eleanor pulls out an old wooden box and places it on the table. Inside are faded photographs, a torn journal, and something that looks like an ancient map of the forest, complete with the location of the cave marked in red ink. "This isn't the first time someone has disappeared," she says, her voice almost a whisper. "The forest has always taken someone, once every 20 years. Always someone young, sensitive, drawn to the quiet." Sarah shivers. "Like Violet." Emma leans closer to the map. "You knew this would happen." "I feared it," Eleanor replies. "But I never thought it would be my daughter. I never thought she would hear them." Emma's eyes widen. "The whispers." Eleanor nods. "It starts with whispers, then visions, then dreams, then they answered the call, just like Violet did." Eleanor hands Emma the torn journal. On the last page, written in shaky ink, is a message that freezes Emma's breath. "I am not lost. I am beyond the veil. Follow the sound, but do not look too long into the dark." It looks back. Emma stares at the page, the whisper in her head, returning like a breeze, slipping through a crack in a door. She is still here, but not for long. As Emma closes the journal, the candlelight in the room flickers violently, then extinguishes. The screen fades to black, the sound of faint whispers rising once more closer, more insistent, and unmistakably calling her name, Emma. The whisper echoes in Emma's ears, louder than before. It's coming from everywhere around her, inside her head, as if it's seeping through the walls of the room itself. She shudders, her pulse quickening. She can't escape it, no matter how hard she tries. Sarah watches her closely, fear written all over her face. "Did you hear that?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma nods, her grip tightening on the journal. The candlelight flickers again, casting eerie shadows across the room. It's as if the very air is alive with whispers, pulling them toward something they can't see. "Someone's trying to reach us," Emma says, her voice barely a murmur. "But who? And why now?" Eleanor, standing quietly in the corner, speaks up. "It's no coincidence. The forest chooses its own. Violet, she was chosen long before you ever arrived." Eleanor leads them into another room, where shelves are lined with more journals and old books. She pulls one down a thick, leather-bound tome and opens it carefully. On the first page is a detailed family tree, stretching back generations. "This," Eleanor says, pointing to a name in the center, "is where it all started. My great-grandmother, Cecilia Rose, was the first to hear the whispers. She was the first to disappear into the woods, lost to whatever haunted this land." Eleanor flips through the pages, showing records of strange disappearances in the town. Every 20 years, someone would vanish without a trace, just like Violet. The names on the list are all young, sensitive people, drawn to the forest in some way. All of them had some connection to the strange symbols and whispers that seemed to haunt the town. "You see," Eleanor continues, "the curse has followed my family for generations. We are bound to it, whether we like it or not. But I thought Violet might be the last. Until now." Emma's head spins as she processes what Eleanor has just revealed. The whispers, the figures in the woods, the ancient symbols, it's all connected to this curse. And now, Violet is somewhere beyond the veil, taken by the same force that claimed all the others before her. "We can't let this happen again," Emma says, more to herself than to anyone else. "We have to find Violet." Eleanor looks at her with a grave expression. "You don't understand. Once the forest calls, there's no returning. Violet might be changed. Whatever took her has taken parts of her parts that will never be the same. But we still have to try," Emma insists. "If we don't, the cycle will continue. Someone else will be chosen. It might be Sarah next." She looks at her friend, fear creeping into her voice. "We can't let that happen." Sarah nods, her expression hardening. "I'm with you, Emma. We're in this together." Emma, Sarah, and Eleanor gather their things, preparing to return to the woods. Eleanor gives Emma a small pendant, similar to the one Violet had worn, and tells her it will protect her from the influence of the forest. She explains that the pendant is made of an ancient stone, imbued with the energy of the land. It won't stop the darkness, but it may help them survive what lies ahead. With their new resolve, they venture back into the forest, following the path they once feared to tread. The whispers grow louder as they draw closer to the cave. Emma feels the weight of the pendant against her chest, a reminder that this might be their last chance to find Violet before it's too late. As they reach the clearing where the altar once stood, Emma notices something different. The air is heavier, thick with an unnatural fog. The trees seem to be closing in around them, their gnarled branches reaching out like hands trying to pull them deeper into the forest. They walk cautiously toward the cave, the whispers now filling their ears, almost deafening. The ground beneath them seems to pulse, as if the forest itself is alive. Suddenly, a figure steps out from the shadows, a pale, gaunt woman with hollow eyes. She stands motionless, her expression vacant. "Violet," Sarah calls out, her voice trembling. The woman's head tilts slightly, and a smile slowly spreads across her face. It's Violet, but not the Violet they knew. Her eyes are cold, lifeless, as if she's been consumed by whatever darkness took hold of the forest. "You shouldn't have come back," Violet says, her voice distant, almost robotic. Emma steps forward, her heart pounding. "Violet, please, come back to us. We're here to help you." Violet's smile widens, and she steps back into the shadows, disappearing into the fog. "You can't save me," she whispers, her voice fading into the distance. "The forest owns me now." Emma, Sarah, and Eleanor stand frozen in the clearing, the fog thickening around them. The whispers grow louder, more desperate. The darkness is closing in, and the forest seems to be pulling them deeper into its grip. "We have to save her, before it's too late." Emma's words hang heavy in the air, her breath visible in the cold, damp fog. She steps forward, but the moment she does, the eerie silence of the forest is broken by the sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, and coming from all directions. They're not alone. Sarah grabs Emma's arm, her voice trembling. "What's happening? What is that sound?" The fog thickens, almost as if the forest itself is closing in around them. Emma scans the darkness, trying to make out the source of the footsteps. But there's nothing, only the shadows shifting between the trees. "Violet." Emma calls out into the mist, her voice cracking. "Please, if you can hear me, come back." The fog seems to swirl as if in response. Then, from the depths of the forest, Violet's voice calls out again, distant, distorted, but unmistakably hers. "You can't save me. I belong to the forest now." Emma and Sarah stand frozen, staring into the mist, unable to see where the voice is coming from. It's like the very air is alive with whispers, pulling them deeper into the woods. Eleanor, who has been silent up until now, steps forward, her face grim. "Do you understand now?" Eleanor's voice is low and steady. "Once the forest claims you, there's no escape. The whispers have been here long before any of us. They choose who they want." Emma clenches her fists. "But Violet, she's not gone." "She can't be." Eleanor looks at her with pity in her eyes. "You're right. She's not gone, but she's no longer the person you knew. The forest has changed her. It twists what it takes. She is no longer just Violet." Eleanor begins to explain the deeper history of the forest, the curse that has plagued her family for generations. The forest is a living entity, a dark force that feeds on those who are sensitive to its whispers. It doesn't just take their bodies, it takes their very essence, their will, their soul. The more they resist, the more the forest tightens its grip. "Violet was drawn to it," Eleanor says, her voice a haunted whisper. "Just like my grandmother, and her grandmother before her. It's a cycle. Once it has you, it doesn't let go." As Eleanor speaks, Emma feels a coldness creeping up her spine. The forest around them seems to shift, the trees bending as if trying to listen. There's a low, ominous hum filling the air, growing louder with every second. "I have to go in," Emma says suddenly, her resolve hardening. "I have to find Violet. If she's still in there, I'll bring her back." "No," Eleanor warns, stepping in front of her. "You don't understand. The forest doesn't give back what it takes. If you go in now, you'll become one of them." "Then I'll take that risk," Emma responds, her eyes fierce. "I have to try." With that, she pushes past Eleanor and steps into the thickening fog, determined to find Violet before the forest consumes her completely. The further they go into the forest, the darker it becomes. The trees seem to close in, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The whispers are deafening now, each word merging into a single, unholy chant. Emma's heart races, but she forces herself to keep moving. She can't stop. She won't stop until she finds Violet. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet shifts. The fog clears for a moment, revealing a familiar stone circle. The same one they had found earlier, but now, it's surrounded by figures. Pale, lifeless figures, some with hollow eyes, others with skin stretched thin over their bones. They stand motionless, their heads tilted toward Emma. "Violet," Emma calls out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, you have to hear me." One of the figures, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes dark like a void, steps forward. It's Violet, but not Violet. Her once beautiful face is twisted in a grimace, her eyes empty, her smile cold. "You shouldn't have come," Violet says, her voice flat and lifeless. "Now, you'll be just like me." The figure raises its hand, and in that moment, the other figures begin to move. Slowly, they encircle Emma, trapping her within the circle of the lost souls. The whispers grow louder, now almost deafening, as if the forest itself is trying to swallow her whole. Just as the figures begin to close in, Emma's breath quickens. She's surrounded, outnumbered, and out of options. But just as the shadows begin to engulf her, a light pierces the darkness. The pendant Eleanor gave her begins to glow. The forest can't claim what is protected. A voice echoes in her mind. The pendant pulses with light, forcing the figures back for a moment. Emma gasps for air, her heart pounding in her chest. This is her only chance. With the light from the pendant cutting through the fog, she rushes forward, trying to break free from the circle. Her eyes locked on Violet, who is slowly fading into the shadows. The glow of the pendant is the only thing cutting through the suffocating darkness, but even its light is fading. Emma pushes forward, her heart pounding, eyes fixed on Violet's fading figure in the distance. Every step she takes feels heavier, the whispers intensifying, twisting into an incoherent chant that fills her head. She can hear Violet's voice again, faint and hollow. "I am lost." "No," Emma breathes out, her voice a mix of defiance and desperation. "I won't let you go, Violet. I won't let the forest take you." As she closes the distance between them, the shadows shift, the figures around her lurking like phantoms. They reach out, their skeletal hands grasping at her, but the pendant flares with an intense light, pushing them back for a moment. The path to Violet is still open. Violet's form flickers, as if her very essence is being pulled in different directions, trapped between two worlds, the one she knew and the darkness of the forest. When she finally speaks again, her words are disjointed, almost as if she's struggling to hold on to her own mind. "You shouldn't have come. It's too late for me. The forest, it's too strong." "Violet," Emma says, her voice trembling but determined. "You're still here. You can fight it. You have to remember who you are. You can come back." Violet's eyes flicker with some recognition, a brief spark of the girl Emma knew. For a split second, there's a fleeting expression of sorrow, as if she wants to reach out, but is held back by something unseen. Then, just as quickly, the emptiness returns to her gaze. "You don't understand," Violet whispers. "It's not just the forest. It's what lives in it. I belong to it now." Emma's blood runs cold. "What lives in it?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. Violet's lips curl into a twisted smile. The voice, "The one who watches. It has me. It will have you too." The ground beneath them shakes, a deep, rumbling vibration that seems to come from the very heart of the forest. The air grows even colder, the fog becoming thicker. From the darkness beyond, a low growl rumbles, a sound that is neither human nor animal. It is the voice of something ancient, something that has been waiting. Suddenly, the shadows twist and writhe, pulling the figures away from Emma. The pendant flickers once more, its light intensifying, but it's not enough to keep the darkness at bay. The air itself seems to hum with the presence of something older, more malevolent. From the edge of the clearing, a new figure emerges, a towering presence, cloaked in a flowing dark mist. Its form is difficult to make out, but its eyes burn with an unnatural light, casting an eerie glow over everything. "You should not have come," the figure speaks, its voice deep and resonant, as if it is speaking from the earth itself. "This is my domain, and now you are mine." Emma's breath catches in her throat as she realizes the figure is not of this world. It is an ancient being, one that has existed for centuries, watching from the shadows, pulling the strings of the forest and those who are drawn to it. "Who are you?" Emma demands, standing her ground. The pendant is still glowing, but its light seems insignificant in comparison to the darkness surrounding them. I am the one who watches, the figure says. I am the forest's heart, its soul, and its curse. And you, Emma Carter, have awakened me. The figure steps forward, its presence overwhelming. The ground beneath them cracks, and the air thickens with a dark energy that makes it hard to breathe. Violet's figure falters, her body flickering as if she is being torn between two forces. Violet, now barely holding on to consciousness, turns her gaze toward Emma. Run, she pleads weakly. Leave, before it's too late. But Emma cannot move. The pull of the figure, the whispers, the cursed, they all weigh heavily on her, keeping her rooted to the spot. You cannot save her. The one who watches continues. She is mine, and now, you will join her. With a sudden, violent movement, the dark figure reaches out, its form swirling with tendrils of smoke and shadow. As it touches the ground, the entire clearing begins to sink, the earth breaking apart beneath them. The darkness seems to consume everything, and the ground beneath Emma's feet gives way. As Emma falls into the abyss, she reaches out one last time, her fingers brushing Violet's hand. The pendant glows brighter than ever before, casting a brief, blinding light. No, she screams, her voice echoing in the endless darkness. Just as she feels herself being pulled into the void, everything goes black. You belong to the forest now. The words linger like a haunting echo, reverberating in Emma's mind as the world around her falls into absolute darkness. She struggles, but her limbs are heavy, and the air is suffocating. Everything seems to pull her down, as if the forest itself is trying to swallow her whole. A sudden jolt, her body slams into something solid. She gasps for breath, her head spinning. The overwhelming pressure eases, and she slowly opens her eyes, blinking against the unfamiliar light. She's not in the clearing anymore. The familiar sounds of the forest are replaced by an eerie, unnatural quiet. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and something older, a shadow, a form in the distance, stirs. The light around Emma flickers and dims, but she sees enough to recognize her surroundings. She's in a vast cavern, its walls slick with moisture, and veins of glowing fungus, casting an unsettling green glow. It feels like the very heart of the forest, ancient and alive, pulsing with energy. Emma rises to her feet, her heart still racing, unsure if she's truly awake or trapped in some nightmarish dream. The ground beneath her feels strange, soft and alive, as if the forest has taken on a physical form, wrapping itself around her. She takes a few steps forward, her mind reeling. Where am I? The air is colder here, but somehow, she feels more aware, more attuned to the strange energy that vibrates through the space. Her pendant, still clutched tightly in her hand, glows faintly, as if responding to the environment. A figure steps out of the shadows, tall and imposing, but this one is different from the being she encountered earlier. It's human, or at least appears to be, with eyes that gleam like mirrors reflecting the light of the cavern. The air around it seems to shimmer, warping the space. You've come far, the figure speaks, its voice deep, almost melodic. But you've crossed into my realm now. Welcome, Emma Carter. The figure steps closer, and Emma instinctively backs away. But there's no escape. The figure's presence is like gravity, pulling her in. Its eyes, cold and unblinking, seem to pierce into her very soul. You have awakened something ancient, the figure continues. Something that's been waiting for centuries. The forest's heart. I am its keeper. Emma clenches her fists. What do you want from me? The figure smiles a thin, knowing smile. What we all want. Freedom. To escape the bonds of this world and become one with the eternal. Emma feels a shiver crawl down her spine. Violet, what happened to her? Where is she? The keeper's expression shifts, his eyes narrowing slightly. She is still here, somewhere. But she's not the girl you knew. The forest has claimed her, as it has claimed countless others. She is part of the pulse now, just like the rest of us. Emma's chest tightens as the realization sinks in. Violet is lost, transformed into something more than human, something tethered to the forest's dark magic. Is that what you do? Emma's voice trembles, but her resolve strengthens. You take people, turn them into monsters. The keeper's smile widens. Not monsters, Emma, part of the forest. The forest is not a place. It is a living, breathing entity, a force of nature older than the world itself. We do not take people, we welcome them into the fold. The forest is the eternal, and those who belong to it live forever. Emma grits her teeth. And if I don't accept your offer? The figure tilts his head, as if considering her words. Then you will join the others. Like Violet. Like the many who came before her. The ground trembles beneath Emma's feet, and suddenly, the earth cracks open, revealing deep, glowing fissures. Figures begin to emerge from the cracks, people who once were. Now shadows of their former selves, their bodies twisted, their faces hollow. They are the lost ones, the chosen, those who have given themselves to the forest. No, Emma shouts, stepping back. The darkness closes in, and the whispering voices rise in volume, drowning out her thoughts. She doesn't know how much longer she can hold on. Her mind is starting to unravel under the weight of the forest's influence. Violet, she cries, desperately searching the shadows for any sign of her friend. Please, come back to me. A familiar face emerges from the shadows. Violet, but not Violet. Her once vibrant eyes are now cold and empty, her skin pallid, her movements jerky as if controlled by some unseen force. She steps forward, her lips parting as if to speak, but only a low, guttural whisper escapes her. It's too late. You can't save me. Emma's heart shatters, but she knows she can't give up now, not when she's so close. With all her strength, she grabs the pendant, holding it up against the overwhelming darkness. Violet, she cries one last time. I know you're still in there. Fight it, please. The pendant glows brighter than ever before, sending a surge of light through the cavern. Violet falters, her body shaking as the light pierces through the darkness. For a moment, there's a flicker of recognition in her eyes, just a brief spark of the girl Emma knew. But then, the shadows rush in, and Violet's form begins to fade, her voice a distant echo. I'm sorry. The light flickers, and the world around Emma collapses into darkness once again. Don't give up. The whisper lingers in the void, distant but unmistakably familiar. Violet's voice. But just as quickly as it came, the darkness overwhelms it, swallowing everything around Emma. She feels herself falling again, the ground slipping away beneath her feet, as if the very earth itself is rejecting her presence. But the light of the pendant is still burning brightly, a small but defiant beacon against the suffocating shadows. The cavern is gone. The darkness consumes her completely, and Emma finds herself suspended in nothingness, the oppressive silence pressing in from all sides. Her breath is shallow, her thoughts racing. Where am I? What's happening? And then, suddenly, the sensation of being pulled upward, forward into something solid. Emma opens her eyes. The oppressive dark is gone, replaced by an endless sky above her. The air is thick, heavy with an ancient weight. She is standing on what seems to be a stone platform, surrounded by a vast, barren landscape that stretches as far as the eye can see. The ground beneath her feet is cracked, jagged, and broken, and in the distance, the silhouette of a massive twisted tree stands alone, its roots sprawling across the land like veins. The light from her pendant pulses brighter, casting long shadows on the cracked earth, and Emma realizes she is no longer in the forest. She is somewhere else, somewhere beyond the reach of reality. And then she sees it, the figure she's been searching for. Violet, standing by the tree, her form barely visible against the dim light, a silhouette bound by the very darkness that Emma has been fighting. Violet, Emma calls out, her voice trembling with urgency. Violet turns, her face a mask of sadness and resignation. Her eyes are still empty, devoid of any emotion, yet there's a flicker of recognition in them. Her voice is low, but clear. You shouldn't have followed me. Emma steps forward, her heart pounding. Violet, please, you have to come back. This isn't you. Whatever the forest has done, we can undo it. We can fix this. Violet's form wavers for a moment, her edges flickering as if caught between two realms. Then, she begins to speak again, her words cutting through Emma's hope like a knife. It's not that simple. You don't understand. The forest, it knows me. It has known me for longer than you can imagine. I can never leave. Emma's chest tightens. No, you're still in there. You have to be. I know you're not gone. But Violet shakes her head slowly, her eyes darkening once again. The forest doesn't just take, it binds. And once it has you, it takes more than your body. It takes your very essence. I am part of it now, Emma, just like all the others before me. As Violet speaks, the twisted tree in the distance begins to tremble, its branches shifting like limbs coming to life. The earth cracks open beneath Emma's feet, and from the depths of the void, the one who watches rises again. You dare defy me? The figure's voice booms, shaking the very air around them. Its glowing eyes fixate on Emma as it steps forward, the ground beneath it warping with every movement. The shadow of the figure casts long, oppressive shadows across the barren land, and Emma feels her knees buckle under the weight of its gaze. "You will not take her from me," Emma says, her voice shaking but resolute. She raises the pendant, the light growing stronger as it pulses in her hand. It is too late for defiance. The figure responds coldly, its voice thick with power. "You are in my realm now. You are bound to this place as much as she is. You have no choice but to stay." The air grows colder, the very essence of the land shifting as if the forest is alive, listening, feeding off their struggle. The branches of the twisted tree stretch further, bending toward Emma and Violet, as if trying to consume them whole. Emma feels the pull, the force of the land itself calling to her, dragging her down into the abyss. She can feel the forest's tendrils reaching for her, trying to bind her, to make her part of its twisted web, but she knows what she has to do. "Violet," Emma whispers, tears welling in her eyes. "Fight it, please. You can fight it. You're stronger than this." For a fleeting moment, Violet's face softens. She takes a step forward, her hand reaching out toward Emma. I tried to fight it, but it's too strong. I'm sorry, Emma." Before Emma can react, the ground beneath them shifts violently. The darkness deepens, and the world around them begins to crumble. The tree shakes, its roots now wrapping around both of them like chains, pulling them deeper into the void. Emma screams, her hand reaching for Violet, but the darkness is pulling them apart. The figure steps forward, its form now towering over Emma, its eyes burning with otherworldly light. "You will never escape," the figure declares, as the light from Emma's pendant fades. The last thing Emma hears is Violet's voice, soft and broken, fading into the abyss. "I'm sorry, Emma, it's over." And with that, the world around her collapses into nothingness. The words echo in Emma's mind, each syllable a weight that drags her deeper into despair. The light from her pendant flickers weakly, casting eerie shadows across the crumbling landscape. She feels herself slipping, her body being torn between the realm she knows and the void that threatens to consume everything. The forest closes in around her, its twisted branches coiling like serpents, its roots burrowing deeper into the earth. Emma is trapped. There's no escape. Not for her, not for Violet. "Violet," she cries, her voice cracking under the weight of defeat. Her heart aches as she searches the darkness for any trace of her friend. "Please, come back." But the shadows don't answer. The world around her is crumbling, the very fabric of reality unraveling, and Emma is left to face the consequences of her defiance. The one who watches stands before her, its glowing eyes like twin beacons in the eternal dark. "You should have accepted your fate, Emma Carter," the figure intones, its voice like thunder, shaking the ground beneath them. "Now, you will join her." Emma's knees tremble, the weight of the figure's gaze unbearable. The light from her pendant dims, almost as if the very forest is siphoning its energy. But Emma refuses to let go. She will not give in. "No," she says, her voice a fierce whisper. "I won't let you take me. I will fight." The figure tilts its head slightly, as if amused. "You think you can fight me? The forest has claimed you already. It has claimed your essence, your soul. You cannot escape." Emma grits her teeth, her grip tightening around the pendant. "I won't become like them. I won't let the forest win." The figure steps forward, its form becoming even more imposing, filling the space with a suffocating presence. "You think you have a choice," it sneers. "The forest doesn't allow choice. It is a living entity, and you're like all before you are a part of it now. Resistance is futile." But Emma's will is stronger than the darkness that surrounds her. She summons all the strength she has left, focusing on the pendant, on the light, on everything that has kept her going. Her determination, her love for Violet, the desire to free her from the forest's grip. The light from the pendant flares, brighter than ever before, searing through the blackness. The figure falters for a moment, its eyes narrowing. "Impossible," it hisses, taking a step back. "I will never be yours," Emma declares, her voice echoing with defiance. But as the light intensifies, the ground beneath her begins to crack open, the very earth shifting and groaning under the pressure. The force of the pendant's energy threatens to tear the world apart. From the shadows, a figure emerges, Violet. But this time, there is no confusion in her eyes, no emptiness. She is whole again, her form glowing with an ethereal light. But the look on her face is filled with sorrow, regret. "Emma," she whispers, her voice soft but filled with pain. Violet steps forward, but the darkness tries to pull her back, like invisible chains tugging at her. Emma's heart races as she sees the struggle in her friend's eyes. Violet, no, don't fight it. Come to me, Emma calls, stretching out her hand. But Violet's form flickers, her voice weak. You don't understand. It's too late for me. The forest has taken me. I can't come back. It's the price. Oh, the price of defying it. Emma's chest tightens. She feels the pull of the darkness around her, and she knows that Violet's time is running out. The forest has claimed her, and it's taking everything she's fought for. No, Emma cries. She steps forward, her voice fierce. You're stronger than this. Fight it, Violet. For a brief moment, Violet's eyes flash with something human, something real. But the shadows tug at her once more, and her form begins to fade. I'm sorry, Violet whispers, her voice distant, fading. I'm sorry. The ground splits wide open beneath Emma's feet, and she feels herself being pulled into the abyss. The pendant's light flickers, its energy draining as the forest retaliates. The voices of the lost souls rise around her, their whispers deafening, suffocating. The figure of the one who watches looms over her once again, its voice a final command. You belong to the forest now. And with that, the world collapses. It's over. The words fade like an echo, but the darkness clings to Emma, heavier than ever. She feels herself falling, the air thick with an unnatural cold, her body weightless, her thoughts scattered like fragile leaves in a storm. The cries of the lost souls swirl around her, a chorus of despair that threatens to drown her. But then, just as the abyss seems to swallow her completely, something shifts, a sharp, sudden pressure, as if she's being pulled back toward the surface. She gasps, her senses returning in fragments. The whispers slow, and the world begins to stabilize around her. Emma opens her eyes to find herself standing once more on solid ground. But this place is different. This isn't the cavern or the broken land she saw before. This is something deeper, darker. The forest stretches out before her, its trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their gnarled branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal hands. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the sky above is perpetually dark, as if the sun has abandoned this place long ago. The ground beneath her feet is soft and damp, like the forest is alive, breathing beneath her. There is an unsettling stillness, the kind that feels alive with anticipation. And then, she sees it. The center of this nightmarish realm stands the heart of the forest, a massive tree, so ancient and twisted that its roots seem to stretch into the very fabric of the world. The trunk is covered in strange markings, glowing faintly in the darkness, as though pulsing with a malevolent life force. The one who watches stands beside it, its form now fully solidified, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. You have reached the heart, the figure intones, its voice like the rustling of dry leaves. This is where the forest begins, and where it ends. This is the final place for those who choose to resist. Emma's chest tightens, the weight of the figure's words sinking in. She realizes now that this isn't just a place. This is the source of the forest's power, the center from which all its darkness spreads. You've taken Violet, Emma says, her voice barely a whisper, but filled with fierce determination. But I won't let you take me. I won't become another one of your lost souls. The figure tilts its head slightly, its eyes glimmering with amusement. You do not understand. The forest does not take what is not already given. It does not claim. It offers. You must give yourself freely, or be consumed. A low rumble shakes the ground beneath her, and the dark tree pulses with energy. Emma's grip tightens around the pendant, still glowing weakly in her hand. She knows this is her final chance, the last moment where she can choose her fate. I won't be a part of this, Emma says, her voice gaining strength. I will never be one of your offerings. The ground trembles, and the whispers grow louder, more frantic. You cannot escape, the figure warns. This place claims all who enter, and you will be no different. Suddenly, the ground cracks open, and from the depths, figures begin to rise. People, or what used to be people, their bodies twisted and hollow, their eyes empty and lifeless. Violet's face appears among them, her form flickering like a fading light. Emma, please. Violet's voice is faint, broken, like a ghost trapped in time. It's too late for me. It's the only way. You don't understand. Tears well up in Emma's eyes as she watches her friend, knowing that Violet is no longer truly herself, but something else, something that belongs to the forest now. Violet, no, Emma calls out desperately, her voice shaking. Fight it, fight them, you're still in there, I know you are. For a brief moment, Violet's form shudders, and the darkness around her wavers, as if resisting her will. But then, as if drawn back into the forest's grip, her eyes go blank once again. I'm sorry, she whispers, her voice swallowed by the darkness. The figure steps forward, towering over Emma. Its cold gaze fixes on her, its presence overwhelming. It is time. The forest has claimed its price. You cannot resist it. You belong to it now. You belong to me. But Emma, standing tall in the face of despair, raises the pendant high. Her hand shakes, but her resolve does not falter. I will not be part of your curse, she says, her voice firm. I choose my fate. The pendant begins to pulse with blinding light, and Emma feels a surge of energy, a force stronger than anything she's ever known. The darkness around her recoils, and the one who watches lets out a low growl of frustration. You cannot defy me, child. But Emma does not falter. The pendant's light grows brighter, and for the first time since she entered the forest, the whispers fall silent. The figure shrieks, a sound filled with rage and anguish. As the light from the pendant begins to tear through the darkness, the forest begins to shake, its roots twisting violently beneath the earth. The heart of the forest trembles, as if it is alive and in pain. The one who watches vanishes into the shadows, its voice lingering like a curse. You cannot win. This forest is eternal. The light from Emma's pendant explodes, blinding everything in its path. Emma falls to her knees, her body trembling from the force of the energy, but she holds on, clinging to the light, to the hope that she can save Violet and herself. And then everything goes dark. This is not the end. The words echo faintly in Emma's mind, reverberating through the crushing silence that surrounds her. The blinding light from the pendant still burns in her vision, but the world around her is blanketed in darkness. She's no longer sure if she's awake or lost in some dream. Her body aches from the immense power she's just unleashed, and the air feels thick like the very weight of the forest itself is pressing down on her. Her chest rises and falls with shallow breaths as she tries to steady herself, still holding the pendant in her trembling hand. For a moment, she fears that the forest has claimed her after all, that the light was nothing but a fleeting illusion. But as her vision clears, she sees something different, a faint, distant glow ahead. Violet, Emma whispers, her voice hoarse. Through the dense fog that has settled, she sees a figure standing in the distance. Its outline is faint, flickering in and out like a fading ember. The figure moves slowly, almost hesitantly, as if drawn to her. Violet, Emma calls out again, hope stirring in her chest, despite the weight of the darkness around her. The figure shifts, and Emma's heart skips a beat. It's Violet, but not entirely. Her form is distorted, her features half real, half shadow, caught between two worlds. Violet's eyes lock with hers, and for a brief moment, there's something human, something real that shines through the haze. Emma, Violet's voice is faint, barely audible, as if it's coming from another realm. I'm sorry. Emma takes a step forward, her heart pounding as she watches her friend, a shell of the person she once knew. Violet, please. I don't care what's happened. I won't leave you here. I'm not giving up on you. Violet takes a step back, shaking her head slowly, her form flickering with the darkness around her. You don't understand. You can't save me anymore. I am part of it now. I am part of the forest. No, Emma shouts, stepping closer. I can save you. You're still in there. I know you are. We can break this. We can break free of this place. Violet's expression hardens, her eyes darkening. You don't know what you're up against. Before Emma can respond, the ground beneath them shifts violently. A deep rumbling sound shakes the very air, and the fog around them thickens, closing in like a vice. The glowing tree, the heart of the forest, pulses once more in the distance. It's the source of all this, of Violet's transformation, of the whispers, of the darkness consuming everything. You cannot escape what the forest has claimed. Violet whispers, her voice no longer her own. I cannot fight it. I cannot resist it anymore. Emma's heart races as the shadows close in tighter. The darkness seems to swallow everything around them, and she can feel the pull of the forest's power, like invisible hands tugging at her very soul. Her eyes widen in realization. You're not just a victim of the forest, Emma says, her voice shaky. You are the forest now, aren't you? You've become part of it. Violet's expression falters for a split second, a fleeting glimpse of regret before the darkness takes over again. I was chosen, Violet says, her voice detached. The forest called me, and I answered. I thought I could control it, but it's too strong. It's in me now. It's us. The ground begins to crack around them, deep fissures opening like gaping mouths, the darkness leaking out. Figures begin to rise from the cracked shadows of those who've been claimed by the forest, their souls trapped in eternal torment. Emma stumbles back, heart pounding. She feels the weight of every soul that has been consumed by this place, every soul that is now part of the darkness. We have to stop this, Emma says, her voice filled with resolve. We can still break free. I won't let you stay here, in this prison. Violet's eyes flash with something: anger, fear, confusion. It's not that simple. The forest will never let us go. We are bound to it, forever. No, Emma says fiercely, standing her ground. I won't accept that. I am not bound to this place, and neither are you. In that moment, the pendant in Emma's hand flares brightly again, its light cutting through the darkness. The trees shudder, the figures in the shadows recoil. The light from the pendant pulses in time with Emma's heartbeat, as if it is responding to her will. The ground cracks open once more, but this time, the darkness begins to retreat, shrinking away from the light. Violet's form flickers again, her face struggling to maintain its ghostly appearance. Emma, Violet's voice is barely a whisper, filled with pain. You don't understand, ... You can't win. It's too late. But Emma steps forward, her eyes filled with determination. I'm not leaving without you. As the darkness begins to retreat, the ground beneath them trembles violently. The one who watches appears once again, its figure towering over them. Its voice is deep and full of fury. You dare defy me, it rumbles, shaking the very earth. The shadows swirl around Emma and Violet, pulling them toward the center of the forest, where the heart waits. Violet's form flickers one last time, and for a moment, Emma sees her as she once was, human, full of life and hope. But then, just as quickly, the darkness consumes her again. It's not over. The figure hisses. You belong to the forest, and you always will. I will save you, Violet. I will not let this be the end. Emma's voice lingers in the thick, oppressive air, but as soon as the words leave her mouth, the forest seems to respond. The ground trembles beneath her feet, and the air crackles with an ancient energy that seems to pull at her very soul. The figure known as the one who watches stands tall before her, its presence casting a long shadow that reaches out like an unyielding hand, ready to consume her. You will belong to me, the figure growls, its voice low and menacing, resonating in the very air around them. The trees, once so silent, begin to groan and shift, as if the forest itself is waking up from a deep slumber. Emma doesn't flinch. She knows this is it, the final confrontation. There is no turning back now. Violet, caught in the pull of the forest's grip, flickers between shadows, her form barely visible in the darkness. Violet, Emma cries out, stepping forward despite the suffocating force pushing against her. Please, fight it. You are not lost. Violet's eyes meet hers, dark, hollow, yet there is something faintly human behind them. For a moment, Emma sees the girl she knew, the friend she fought so hard to save. But then, just as quickly, the darkness takes over again, her body twisting as if controlled by an unseen hand. I can't. Violet's voice cracks, barely a whisper. I've tried, but it's too strong. Emma's heart clenches, but she refuses to give in. No, you're still in there. Violet, I know you are. You can fight this. The darkness surges, its grip tightening around both of them. The figure steps forward, its form now looming above them. You still don't understand, Emma Carter. You are the one who has come too far. The forest doesn't simply claim what it wants, it takes everything, and now, you are part of it. The ground cracks beneath Emma's feet, and the blackness pulls at her, dragging her toward the heart of the forest. The pendant in her hand pulses with a fading light, its power weakening against the overwhelming force of the darkness. Emma struggles to stay grounded, her body trembling with the weight of the curse that surrounds her. I won't become one of your offerings, Emma spits, each word filled with defiance. She raises the pendant high, the light flickering but not going out completely. This is my choice, not yours. The figure lets out a low chuckle, its eyes glowing with cruel amusement. You think you can resist the pull of the forest, You think you can choose your fate. You are already ours. A cold wind blows through the clearing, and the air grows heavy, suffocating. Violet's form flickers again, her expression one of anguish. Emma, her voice is barely audible, but filled with sorrow. I can't fight it anymore. I don't know how to get out. Emma's chest tightens with grief. You have to try. You have to remember who you are. You're not just a part of this darkness. You're Violet Rose, my friend, my family. Violet's eyes flicker, a single tear tracing down her cheek. I'm sorry, Emma, she whispers, her form beginning to dissolve into the shadows. The last piece of humanity within her seems to slip away, lost to the forest's insatiable hunger. But Emma will not give up. Not now, not when she's so close. She takes a deep breath, steadying herself against the overwhelming pressure, and makes a decision. The forest may be ancient, but Emma has learned one thing in this nightmare: she is not powerless. I choose to fight, Emma declares, her voice resonating with fierce resolve. She grips the pendant tightly, feeling its power surge one last time. I will save you, Violet, even if it costs me everything. With a sudden burst of light, the pendant flares brighter than it ever has before, its glow slicing through the darkness. The ground trembles violently, and for a moment, the one who watches falters. The forest shudders, the once immovable trees bending as if pushed by an invisible force. The shadows retreat, but only for a moment. The figure's eyes flare with rage. You cannot fight the forest, Emma. You have already paid the price. The air thickens with an unbearable weight, and the figure reaches out, its long, skeletal hand closing around Emma's wrist with a force that nearly crushes her bones. She gasps, her vision swimming with the pressure. But before the figure can claim her, Violet's form appears once again, flickering like a candle in the wind, caught between light and shadow. Her voice breaks through the storm. Emma, you have to let go of me. The plea slices through Emma's heart, but she knows what must be done. She knows that the only way to end this, to break the forest's hold, is to release Violet, to let go of the past. With all her strength, Emma pulls free from the figure's grip, stepping back, her heart breaking as Violet's form slowly begins to dissolve into the shadows. I'm sorry, Emma whispers, tears streaming down her face. I'll remember you. The darkness begins to collapse around them, and with one final flash of light from the pendant, the entire world shatters. The trees, the figure, and the heart of the forest crumble into nothingness, leaving Emma standing in a vast, empty void. The figure's voice is the last thing she hears before everything fades into silence. It is not over. You are still mine. The words echo, reverberating through the emptiness like a death knell. The weight of them presses down on Emma, suffocating her, wrapping around her chest like cold steel. Her breath comes in shallow gasps, her heart racing as she stares into the void that now surrounds her. She stands in the aftermath of the forest's destruction, its heart crumbled into dust, its whispers silenced, its figure gone. But she's not free, not yet. The air is thick, and the absence of the forest's presence leaves a haunting silence in its wake. The ground beneath Emma is uneven, the remnants of the dark trees' roots still sprawling across the desolate landscape. But there's something off about it all. It doesn't feel like the end. No, it feels like she's stepped into the aftermath of something much larger than herself, something that is still pulling at her, urging her forward. Violet, Emma whispers, her voice trembling. I couldn't save you, but I won't let this place win. As she walks through the remains of the forest, her footsteps echoing in the quiet, she realizes that the world around her is fractured like shards of glass spread across an empty canvas. The ground beneath her shifts, crumbling into jagged pieces that seem to exist between worlds, suspended in time. There's no sun here, no moon, just a perpetual twilight, an eternal dusk, as though reality itself is breaking apart. But as she ventures deeper, she senses it, a pull, subtle at first, like a whisper that beckons her forward. The landscape before her seems to warp and bend, and in the distance, she sees something familiar: a doorway, a gate, partially open, beyond which lies a swirling mass of light and shadow. Emma's heart races as she approaches the gate. She feels as if she's been here before, but where? As she steps closer, she realizes that the gate is not just a door, it is a passage, an entrance to somewhere else, somewhere that exists outside of time and space. There is no logic here, no rules. The very air feels heavy, alive with the hum of something vast and unknowable. Her hand shakes as she reaches toward the threshold. The pull is stronger now, like a magnetic force pulling at her very soul. She hesitates for a moment, but then steps through, leaving the shattered remains of the forest behind her. On the other side, the world is different. The air is clearer, the ground firm beneath her feet. Yet, it still feels wrong. The sky is darker, almost unnatural in its stillness. There are no stars, no moon, just an overwhelming, endless expanse of nothingness, and standing before her, bathed in dim light, is a figure she thought she'd left behind. The figure steps forward from the shadows, its form now unmistakable. The one who watches. "I told you, Emma," it says, its voice cold and hollow. "You can never escape. You are part of this now." Emma freezes, her pulse pounding in her ears. She's not back in the forest. She's somewhere else. But the figure, the force behind the darkness, has followed her here. "You were right," Emma says, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "This is not over, but I will finish it. I'll end this curse once and for all." The figure tilts its head, a smile playing across its features, but there is no warmth in it. "You think you can end this? You think you can undo what's been done?" Its eyes glow brighter now, and the air begins to hum with power. "You were never meant to survive this, Emma. The forest chose you, and the forest never lets go." Emma's body shakes with a sudden surge of energy, as if the world around her is pushing against her very existence. The pull of the darkness is overwhelming, stronger than anything she's faced before. Her vision blurs, her thoughts scatter, and for a moment, she feels herself losing her grip on reality. She falls to her knees, clutching the pendant to her chest. As it pulses with a dull light, the energy within it is faint, but it's all she has left. "No, ... she whispers, fighting to hold on to herself. "This is my choice. I refuse to be another offering to you." The one who watches steps forward, and the ground beneath Emma's knees cracks wide open. The abyss threatens to swallow her whole. "You cannot fight what is inevitable," it says, its voice like the crushing weight of the world. "The forest will claim all. The price of defiance is your soul." Suddenly, the pendant bursts with light, blinding in its intensity. The figure shrieks, recoiling as if the light is burning it. Emma's eyes, wide with determination, meet its gaze. She forces herself to stand, despite the overwhelming pressure of the darkness closing in. "You were wrong," Emma says, her voice loud and clear. "The price of defiance isn't my soul. It's yours." The light from the pendant flares, growing stronger, brighter, until it surrounds her completely. The figure shrieks again, its form disintegrating in the light. Its power crumbles like dust in the wind. The world around Emma begins to unravel, but in this moment, she feels more alive than ever. But just as Emma feels herself break free from the forest's grasp, a voice calls out, distant and pained. "Emma." Violet's voice, weak but unmistakable, echoes through the collapsing world. The pull of the darkness grows once more, and Emma's heart stops. She looks into the swirling void, knowing that she can't leave without saving her friend. She takes a step toward the light, the shadows creeping closer. "Emma, please, don't leave me." Violet's voice echoes in the distance, a faint whisper cutting through the void, filled with desperation. The pull of her call is too strong to ignore. Emma's body aches from the effort to resist, but every instinct screams at her to turn back, to save her friend from the darkness that has consumed her. She stands at the edge of the void, the fabric of reality trembling around her, unsure of which direction to take. The light from the pendant flickers, barely hanging on against the oppressive weight of the darkness. But Emma knows that if she doesn't act now, if she doesn't reach Violet in time, the price of defiance will become something far worse than she could imagine. "Violet," she whispers, her voice breaking, "I'm coming for you." With every ounce of strength she has left, Emma steps forward, the world around her warping as she moves through the fractured realm. The air is thick with the smell of decay, and the whispers of the lost souls surround her, their voices filled with anguish. They try to pull her in, try to drown her in their endless sorrow, but Emma pushes through. She has no time to waste. The landscape shifts before her eyes, the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurring. She feels her mind beginning to splinter, the darkness trying to invade her thoughts. For a brief moment, she questions her own sanity. Is this really happening? Or is it just another twisted illusion created by the forest to break her? But then, she hears it again, the soft, distant cry of Violet. Her voice is weak, fragile, but there's something unmistakable in it. Hope. "I'm here. Emma, please." Emma doesn't hesitate. She follows the sound, pushing deeper into the chaos, the very air around her becoming heavier, more suffocating. The ground beneath her feet buckles, and she struggles to maintain her balance. She feels herself slipping, but she refuses to stop. The light from the pendant pulses again, stronger this time, as if it senses the urgency of Emma's resolve. She holds it out in front of her, the only source of clarity in this disorienting world. But the more she moves, the more the darkness fights back, like an endless tide pushing her away from the truth she's seeking. Just as Emma reaches what she believes to be the center of the void, the air around her shifts. The whispers grow louder, sharper. Their voice is now a cacophony of anguish and fear. They swirl around her, disorienting her, pulling at her mind. The trees that once stood in the distance have now become vast, looming silhouettes that stretch high into an unending sky. The walls of the void are closing in on her, and the one who watches appears once again, its form now even more monstrous, its power undeniable. "You cannot escape me," it declares, its voice a guttural roar that rattles the very ground beneath Emma. "You are mine, just as she is." The darkness begins to creep in, swallowing the light from the pendant, smothering it like a flame in the wind. Emma feels the pressure on her chest increase, as if the very weight of the forest is pushing her down, suffocating her. "I'm not yours," Emma shouts, her voice defiant, refusing to let the figure's power consume her. "I will never belong to you." But the figure laughs, low and cruel. "You already have, Emma Carter. You just don't realize it yet." With one last desperate cry, Emma reaches out for Violet, who is standing at the edge of the darkness, her form flickering like a ghost, trapped between two worlds. Her eyes, once full of life, are now empty, consumed by the forest's will. "Emma," Violet whispers again, her voice thin and broken. "I can't feel you anymore. It's too late." "No," Emma screams, her chest aching with the weight of her words. "I'm here. I'm right here." The forest shudders, the ground beneath them quaking, but Violet does not move. The pull of the darkness has a grip on her too strong to resist. Emma can see it now, the invisible chains binding her friend to the forest, wrapping tighter with every passing second. But Emma refuses to give in. She takes a step forward, her voice trembling but unwavering. "Violet, I won't leave you. I will fight for you, no matter what." With one final, forceful movement, Emma holds the pendant up high, its light shining brighter than ever before, its energy flooding the void. The figure recoils as the light pierces through the darkness, forcing it back. The shadow that had consumed Violet's form flickers, wavers, struggling to maintain its hold. And then, for the briefest moment, Violet's eyes clear. She looks at Emma, her expression full of sorrow, but also filled with something else, hope. She steps toward Emma, her hand reaching out in the same way that Emma had reached for her. "Emma," Violet whispers, her voice barely a breath. "You saved me, but you've brought me here, to this place. The forest will never let us go." But Emma does not falter. With a final burst of energy, the pendant's light erupts, engulfing them both in blinding radiance. The ground cracks open, and the world around them begins to shatter, the darkness receding, torn apart by the sheer force of the light. But just as Emma feels the light surge through her, she hears one last, chilling cry from the forest. It's not over. The figure's voice, distant but unmistakable, lingers in her mind. The world around her implodes, and Emma is left in a vast, endless void once again, the light of the pendant flickering. "You can't escape. You never will." The chilling words of the one who watches resonate in Emma's ears, but they feel like distant echoes against the overwhelming silence that now surrounds her. The forest is gone. The ground beneath her is no longer trembling, no longer crumbling away. Yet, she stands alone in a vast, empty void, a place that feels beyond time, beyond the laws of the world she once knew. The pendant in her hand flickers weakly, its glow faint against the darkness, closing in on all sides. The cold weight of defeat presses against her chest. She feels small, insignificant, as if the very essence of her existence is unraveling in the face of a force far older than herself. But then, in the distance, she hears a faint, familiar voice, Violet's voice. "Emma." The call is weak, but it carries through the emptiness, a thread of hope that cuts through the suffocating silence. Emma's heart leaps, her hands trembling as she clutches the pendant tighter. She knows that she can't afford to give in now, not when she's this close, not when she's fought so hard. Emma takes a step forward, her vision blurred as the void around her shifts and warps. The very air seems to bend, the darkness folding in on itself, and with each step she takes, the world begins to take form again. The ground beneath her solidifies, the oppressive silence lifts, and the faint glow of the pendant becomes brighter, its warmth now pushing back the shadows. She looks ahead, and there, at the center of the void, stands the broken silhouette of the twisted heart of the forest. It is no longer the monstrous figure it once was, but a mere shadow of itself. The roots that once sprawled across the land are now shriveled and lifeless, and the sky above is cracked, as if the very fabric of reality is splitting apart. But within the broken remnants of the tree, there's something more, Simon. Violet. Emma's breath catches in her throat as she rushes toward her friend. Violet stands in the center of the ruins, her form flickering like a candle in the wind, caught between the light and the darkness. Her eyes are distant, empty, and her body seems to be fading, as though it is no longer truly hers. The force of the forest's grip still holds her, but she's not gone completely. Emma can still feel the faint pulse of her presence, still see the traces of the girl she once knew. Violet, Emma calls out, her voice desperate. Please, you have to come back. You can still fight this. Violet's eyes flicker, and for a brief moment, there's a flash of recognition. But it's fleeting, gone in an instant, replaced by the void once again. I tried, Emma, Violet whispers, her voice thin and broken. But it's too late. The forest is too powerful. I can't escape. The pain in her voice tears at Emma's heart, but she refuses to give in. No, we can escape. Together, we can end this. You're still in there, Violet. I know you are. The figure of the one who watches looms behind Violet, its presence filling the space, suffocating them both. It's already too late for her, the figure declares, its voice like a storm. The forest has claimed her, and now, it claims you, too. Emma's chest tightens as the shadows around them close in, their tendrils reaching out, pulling at her, threatening to drag her back into the darkness. But this time, Emma isn't afraid. She stands her ground, the pendant burning with newfound energy in her hand. You're wrong, Emma says, her voice unwavering. I am not part of this, neither of us are. I will break this curse, even if it's the last thing I do. The one who watches laughs, low and mocking. You cannot break what has already been written. The forest does not end. It is eternal. Emma's heart pounds in her chest, the energy from the pendant surging as she steps forward, closing the gap between herself and Violet. She reaches out, her fingers brushing against Violet's cold, lifeless hand. The light from the pendant flares brightly, almost blinding in its intensity. And in that moment, everything changes. The void around them begins to fracture. The earth cracks beneath them, and the forest's remnants begin to collapse, falling apart like sand slipping through her fingers. The figure of the one who watches recoils as the light from the pendant grows stronger, pushing back the darkness. The very air seems to hum with the energy of the pendant, the force of Emma's will, and the flickering remnants of Violet's soul. For a brief moment, the dark figure seems to waver, its form flickering like an unstable illusion. This is impossible. It roars, its voice trembling with rage. You cannot undo what has already been done. But Emma's voice rings out, filled with unwavering determination. I can, and I will. The light from the pendant bursts with a final blinding flash, and for a brief moment, Emma feels the weight of the darkness lift. The world around them trembles, but this time, it's not the forest fighting back, it's the very fabric of the curse unraveling. Violet's form flickers again, her eyes clearing for the first time in what feels like an eternity. Emma, her voice is weak, but it's real. She reaches out, her hand trembling, but the light from the pendant touches her, and she is pulled back from the edge, from the void. For a brief, fleeting moment, Violet is whole again, alive. But just as Emma reaches for her, the ground beneath them begins to split open. The void resurfaces, swirling with darkness, and the figure of the one who watches lets out a final, deafening scream. This is not over. The forest will claim you. The light from the pendant flickers one last time before fading. The last thing Emma hears is Violet's voice, weak but clear. It's not over. Not yet. The words echo in Emma's mind, reverberating through the crumbling remnants of the world around her. The forest's pulsed, the last remnants of its whole throbs in the air, as if it is alive, waiting, watching. The darkness recedes, but only just enough to give Emma a fleeting glimpse of freedom. The light from the pendant flickers, its brilliance now dimmed, almost exhausted, but still fighting. Violet's form is still there, but barely. She stands, her presence fragile, the last spark of her humanity clinging to the edges of the darkness. Her eyes, once empty, are now filled with a flicker of recognition, though she seems distant, almost as if she's caught between worlds. "Emma, I'm sorry." Violet's voice cracks, her words barely audible, but the emotion behind them is undeniable. Emma steps forward, her heart pounding in her chest, feeling the weight of everything they'd been through the years, the pain, the struggle. "You don't have to apologize, Violet. You're not gone. You can still come back." Violet looks at her, the faintest trace of a smile appearing on her lips, but it quickly fades as she looks down at her hands, her once lively fingers now trembling. "I don't know how. I don't know if I can. The forest, it's inside me now. It's a part of me." Emma's resolve hardens. "No, Violet, this isn't you. You can fight it. We both can." But even as she speaks, she feels the pressure mounting again, the oppressive weight of the void around them growing stronger, more suffocating. The ground trembles beneath her feet, and the sky above darkens once more. The forest's heart, the twisted gnarled tree that had once symbolized destruction, now pulses like a living beast, hungry and unforgiving. From the depths of the growing darkness, a presence stirs. It's not the one who watches, not this time. Something more ancient, more primal, is rising, the force that has always ruled this cursed place. "You cannot fight what is inevitable," the voice rumbles, deep and resonant, coming from all directions. "You have entered my domain, Emma Carter, and now, you will join us." Emma turns, her breath catching in her throat. A figure steps forward from the shadows. It's cloaked in mist, its form vague and shapeless, but its eyes, those glowing eyes, pierce through her like daggers. "You think you can defy the will of the forest?" The figure hisses. "You are nothing. Your struggle is meaningless." The figure's form solidifies, becoming more defined with every step it takes toward Emma and Violet. But there is no fear in Emma's heart, not now. She feels the power of the pendant coursing through her once more, her grip tightening on it. "I don't care what you are," she says, her voice steady, unwavering. "I won't let you take her. You will not win." The figure laughs, a deep guttural sound that shakes the ground beneath them. "You do not understand, Emma. This is not about winning. This is about fate, and your fate has already been sealed." But Emma steps forward, her feet planted firmly on the ground, her determination unshakable. "You don't control me. You never have." A crack splits the earth beneath them, and the world shifts again. The figure's dark influence tries to pull her in, but Emma resists with all her might, holding the pendant aloft. Its light flares again, stronger than ever before, and for the first time, Emma feels the weight of everything she's fought for, the people she loves, the memories of the life she's trying to save, all of it fueling her resolve. Violet watches her, her expression a mixture of sadness and hope. She steps closer to Emma, her voice soft but full of pain. "Emma, you have to let me go. You can't save me. Not like this." Emma's heart breaks, but she doesn't hesitate. "I'm not letting go. Not now. Not when we're so close." Violet's form flickers again, and for the briefest of moments, her human self shines through, alive, vibrant, but the darkness pulls at her, threatening to swallow her once again. "The forest. It's too much." Violet's voice trembles. With a deep breath, Emma steps closer, her eyes locked with Violet's. "The only way we end this, Violet, is together. We break the curse together." The light from the pendant flares one last time, casting a brilliant light that cuts through the darkness. The figure shrieks, its form splintering, breaking apart under the intensity of the light. The forest shakes, its roots pulling from the earth, but they cannot hold. Just as the figure shatters, Violet's form falters once more, her body slipping between light and shadow. Emma reaches out, grabbing her hand just in time, and for a moment, everything stops. The forest begins to crumble, its power weakening as the last remnants of its influence dissolve. The sky above begins to clear, revealing the first rays of sunlight they've seen in what feels like an eternity. But before Emma can pull Violet to safety, the ground beneath them cracks open again, and a shadow darker than anything they've faced yet rises. The one who watches, reborn from the ashes of the forest's heart, stares down at them, its eyes filled with a silent fury. "This is only the beginning. You cannot escape your fate, Emma Carter." The words of the one who watches hang in the air like a shadow, casting a cold chill over Emma's already weary heart. She feels the weight of them heavy, suffocating, pressing against her chest, but she refuses to give in. The world around them is collapsing, the remnants of the forest and the darkness that once reigned, now crumbling like a dying dream. Violet stands beside her, flickering between light and shadow, her eyes filled with both fear and a faint spark of hope. The forest trembles around them, its grip weakening, but the figure of the one who watches looms over them, more terrifying than ever before. Emma steps forward, her hand still gripping the pendant, its light pulsing softly in the chaos. "I won't let you take us again," she says, her voice steady, despite the terror that threatens to break through. "I will end this, once and for all." The figure of the one who watches simply watches, its eyes glowing like twin infernos. "You think you can stop what has already been set into motion?" it asks, its voice as cold as ice. "The forest is eternal. You are just a fleeting moment in its long, twisted history." The ground shakes beneath Emma's feet, and the air becomes thick with the smell of decay and rot. The landscape around them begins to distort, warping into shapes that make no sense, as if the very fabric of reality is falling apart. The dark sky above cracks open, revealing glimpses of otherworldly horrors, twisted and malformed creatures from the depths of the forest. Emma feels her knees buckle under the weight of it all, but she stands her ground. "I won't let you control me. You won't take her. Not this time." Violet's voice trembles, as if she's trying to speak from the depths of her broken soul. It's not that simple, Emma. The forest. It's inside me, in my blood, in my heart. I don't know if I can escape it anymore." Emma reaches out, grabbing Violet's hand with a fierce grip. "No, we are stronger than this. We can fight this together." Violet falters, her form flickering like a dying star, but she looks at Emma, her eyes full of regret. "I can't. The forest is too powerful. I was chosen. Before she can finish, the one who watches raises a hand, its fingers long and gnarled. "Enough," it commands, its voice rising with a cold finality. "Your struggle is futile. The forest is mine, and so are you." The figure's presence overwhelms them, and for a moment, Emma feels herself faltering, the darkness closing in. The air grows colder. The very ground beneath them seems to resist every step they take. Yet, deep within her, Emma feels something stirring, something far stronger than fear. It's the strength of all she's fought for, the memories of the life she's trying to preserve. "This isn't who I am," Emma whispers to herself, her voice barely audible. "I'm not a victim. I never was." In that moment of clarity, something shifts. The light from the pendant flickers brighter than it ever has before, illuminating the dark void around them. The one who watches falters for a brief second, as if the light is an unexpected force it can't control. Violet, standing beside her, gasps as the light reaches her. The air around them crackles, and the oppressive weight of the forest's grip begins to loosen, just slightly. What is this?" Violet whispers, her form becoming more solid, more real with every passing second. Emma looks at her, her eyes filled with determination. "This is our chance, Violet. This is our fight. The forest cannot hold us anymore." The one who watches snarls, its eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot defeat me. You cannot defeat the forest. It is the world. It is the beginning and the end. It is all that has ever been." But Emma, her heart racing, steps forward, pushing past the growing darkness. "I don't need to defeat the forest. I just need to break its hold on us, and I will do it, even if I have to burn this place to the ground." With that, she holds the pendant high, its light surging outward like a tidal wave, cutting through the very fabric of reality. The one who watches recoils, its body rippling as if it's struggling to hold its form. The air around them cracks, and the very earth begins to tremble with the force of the light. The darkness screeches in pain, its form dissolving bit by bit under the light's influence. But it's not enough. The figure begins to pull itself together, its body reconstituting as it rises higher into the air. "You cannot destroy what is eternal," it hisses. "You will never be free. This world is mine, and it always will be." Emma grits her teeth, her hand clutching the pendant with all the strength she has left. "I won't stop until you're gone." The light from the pendant flares one last time, so bright that Emma can barely see. The one who watches screams, its form disintegrating under the light's force, but it is not defeated yet. The ground beneath them cracks wide open, a swirling vortex of darkness and light pulling them both in. Violet's form begins to flicker once again, her voice calling out one final time. Emma, help me please. You can't escape, you never will. The figure's words reverberate in Emma's mind, an insidious reminder of the force she's up against. But this time, they feel distant, weak, fading. The darkness that had once threatened to swallow her whole is beginning to lose its power. The light from the pendant, though faint, burns bright, cutting through the suffocating blackness that still claws at her. Emma stands in the center of the chaos, her hands trembling but steady, her eyes locked on Violet, who is still flickering between light and shadow. Violet's voice is barely a whisper, but it cuts through the air, piercing the despair like a beacon of hope. Emma, help me, Every word, every breath Violet takes feels like it's fighting to break free from the curse that holds her. And Emma, despite the exhaustion and pain that have racked her body, refuses to let go. This ends now, Emma says quietly, her voice firm with determination. We've come too far to turn back. The swirling vortex of darkness and light around them continues to twist and distort. But Emma feels a sense of clarity she hasn't felt in what seems like forever. The pendant, though flickering, holds the key. It is the last piece of light that remains in this fractured world. The one who watches roars in fury, its form contorting violently, as if it's being pulled apart by the force of the light. You cannot break what is already shattered. It howls, its voice filled with malice. But Emma doesn't waver. She steps forward, holding the pendant high, its light growing stronger with each passing second. Violet's form flickers more violently now, her eyes filled with pain and confusion. Emma, please, I'm sorry. I'm not strong enough. You are. Emma's voice breaks with emotion. You always have been. Violet's body trembles as the darkness tries to pull her back, but Emma, with all her strength, reaches out, grabbing her friend's hand one last time. We can end this, together. It's not too late. The ground beneath them cracks once more, and the vortex expands, pulling the darkness back. The one who watches fights, but its form flickers, its essence slowly unraveling as the light from the pendant surges. The earth shudders violently, but Emma and Violet hold their ground, their hands connected, the light pushing back the darkness. The forest's heart, the twisted tree that once stood as a symbol of the curse, begins to disintegrate. Its roots wither and crumble, its dark branches snapping, falling apart like brittle wood. The air grows lighter, the oppressive weight lifting as the darkness is pushed back, retreating into the void from which it came. For a moment, everything stops. The light from the pendant floods the entire realm, casting out the shadows, burning away the last remnants of the forest's hold. Emma feels the presence of the one who watches weaken, its power draining away as the very essence of the forest collapses around them. Violet's body flickers one final time, and Emma feels her hand grow warm with life. Her friend's form stabilizes, and her eyes, those hollow eyes, finally regain the spark of life. Emma, she whispers, her voice weak but clear. I can feel it. I can feel myself again. I'm sorry, I couldn't fight it. Tears fill Emma's eyes as she looks at her friend. You don't have to apologize. You never gave up, and neither will I. The forest's final remnants begin to dissolve, the air becoming clear, the oppressive fog lifting. For the first time in what feels like forever, Emma can breathe deeply without the weight of the curse suffocating her. The pendant in her hand glows brighter than ever before, its power finally reaching its peak. But with its light, Emma knows this moment is fleeting. The one who watches is no longer a threat, but its influence still lingers in the cracks of reality. As the final remnants of the darkness fade, Emma feels the weight of everything that's happened, the sacrifices, the pain, the loss. But in this moment, with Violet standing by her side, Emma knows that they have broken free. The one who watches is gone, reduced to nothingness. But Emma knows there is still a cost to their victory. The forest's grip has been severed, but its echoes remain. It's a battle they've won, but the scars will remain, the memories of those lost forever etched in the world. Violet looks at her, her eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. I don't know if we'll ever be able to undo everything the forest did, but we're free. We're free because you didn't give up on me. Emma smiles, though her heart aches. We saved each other. As the last remnants of the forest crumble into dust, the landscape before them begins to shift. The world around them changes, the once fractured reality beginning to stabilize. The sky clears, and a warm light breaks through the darkness, bathing them in a soft, golden glow. But as the light envelops them, Emma knows this is the final moment before everything settles. She feels the weight of the journey, the loss of everything they once knew, but also the promise of something new. "Are you ready?" Violet asks softly, her voice filled with quiet hope. Emma nods, her heart full. "I'm ready." The world around them stabilizes, and the final remnants of the forest dissipate. Emma and Violet stand side by side, the last light of the pendant fading into the horizon. They've faced darkness together, and now they will face the future.